I'm Sarah, and for 15 years, I quietly funded my younger sister's glamorous lifestyle. Her designer handbags, spa weekends, even the marble in her kitchen, while raising my 2 kids alone on a nurse's salary. I told myself it was just temporary, just until she got back on her feet. But last Christmas, when she uninvited us from her party because we didn't match the aesthetic, something in me broke. So I showed up anyway, with my head high, my kids in their best clothes, and the receipts. And in front of 30 of her high society guests, I finally told the truth she spent her life covering up. That night, I didn't just reclaim my dignity, I taught my children what real worth looks like. Before I share the full story, drop a comment if you've ever put someone else's comfort ahead of your own peace. And hit that like and subscribe button if you've had to draw a line, even with family. This story might just be the boundary you've been needing. I've always been the steady one, the responsible one. While my younger sister Clara chased after a life of glamour and luxury, I was building a life rooted in what truly mattered. My children, Ethan and Lily. They're 10 and 8 now, and they are my entire world. Our humble 3-bedroom rental in the suburban outskirts of Philadelphia isn't something you'd find gracing the pages of Architectural Digest. But it's bursting at the seams with laughter, with homemade art projects taped to the fridge, and with that messy, beautiful chaos that only a truly loved home can hold. I work as a pediatric nurse at City General Hospital, and believe me, I pull double, sometimes triple shifts, just to keep us afloat. But every single exhausting hour, every late night, every early morning, it's all worth it when I see Ethan's bright smile after he aces a math test, or when Lily shows me a new drawing, her eyes shining with pride. They are my why. Clara and I, we took vastly different paths, right from the very beginning. We grew up in a typical middle-class neighborhood in Pennsylvania. Our childhood bedroom, with its peeling floral wallpaper and creaky bunk beds, was a shared space, but sometimes it felt like we were growing up on different planets. I was the one who saved every dollar of my allowance, meticulously squirreling it away for books, for school supplies, and later for college. Clara? Oh, Clara spent every single penny on glossy fashion magazines, on the latest makeup trends, always dreaming of a bigger, more opulent world. I can still vividly recall her 16th birthday party. We were blowing out candles, and she declared, with an almost terrifying intensity, "I'm going to marry rich, and I'll never have to worry about money ever again." My parents, God bless them, they were hardworking teachers. They instilled in us the timeless values of education, of compassion, of integrity. They'd exchange worried glances whenever Clara uttered such pronouncements. Dad, ever so gentle, would remind us, "Character, girls, that's what truly lasts. Possessions, they come and go." And Mom, she always emphasized that true success isn't about what you acquire, but what you contribute. Those lessons, those profound, simple truths, they shaped me down to my very core. But with Clara, it seemed like they just bounced right off. After college, where I earned my nursing degree on a patchwork quilt of scholarships and part-time jobs, I launched my career. That's when I met Michael, the man who would become my children's father. Our relationship, it wasn't built to last. He wasn't ready for the responsibilities that come with a family, for the quiet dedication that raising children demands. But before he moved across the country, he gave me Ethan and Lily, 2 of the greatest gifts I could ever imagine. He sends occasional child support checks when he remembers, when life somehow prompts him to recall his parental duties. But honestly, we've learned to manage without ever counting on them. We learned self-reliance. Meanwhile, Clara, she dropped out of community college almost as soon as she met David. David, the son of a wildly successful real estate mogul. Their romance was a whirlwind, a tornado of designer clothes and exotic trips, culminating in a lavish, almost absurdly extravagant wedding. A wedding that my parents, with their modest teachers' salaries, simply couldn't afford to contribute much toward. I remember, with a pang of bittersweet irony, emptying my own modest savings, every last dollar I had, just to help them pay for the flowers. Clara, you see, insisted she needed those specific, rare, imported orchids. She promised, with wide, earnest eyes, that she'd pay me back someday. That someday, as you might guess, never ever came. Instead, a pattern emerged. A predictable, soul-crushing pattern. Clara would call, her voice thick with manufactured tears, lamenting an overdue credit card bill that was threatening her reputation. Or she'd casually mention how embarrassed she'd be if she couldn't join David's colleagues' wives on their exclusive high society spa weekend in Napa. Each time, like a fool, I'd transfer the money, always with the implicit, naive understanding that it was just until things settled down. Of course, those things never, ever settled. And over the span of 15 years, a decade and a half of my life, I funneled nearly $60,000 into meticulously maintaining my sister's extravagant facade. Why did I do it? Why did I keep bleeding myself dry? Part of me, a deep, persistent part, still saw that terrified little girl who would climb into my bed during thunderstorms, clutching her teddy bear. Part of me felt this almost primal responsibility for her happiness, for her emotional well-being. And honestly, a deeply foolish part of me truly believed her promises. Her earnest, often tear-filled promises that, once she and David made it big, once their star truly ascended, they'd repay everything, with interest. What David didn't know, what virtually no one in their glittering social circle knew, except for Clara and me, was that his family's immense wealth was primarily tied up in vast properties, in intricate, long-term investments, not readily accessible for daily luxuries. His monthly income, substantial as it was, primarily covered their astronomical mortgage payments, their basic utilities, and the bare necessities of their opulent lifestyle. But Clara's endless designer wardrobe, her extravagant spa treatments, her meticulously planned lavish parties, they were, for the most part, funded by her schoolteacher sister's hard-earned nursing salary. My salary. The irony was a bitter pill I swallowed daily. Each year, Clara's Christmas gathering became more extravagant, more ostentatious, and her attitude in turn grew more condescending. Last year, she referred to my sensible, reliable sedan as quaint, a relic from another era. She even had the audacity to suggest that Lily might benefit from elocution lessons, implying her speech wasn't up to par with the elite circles her children moved in. I swallowed my pride, a familiar knot forming in my stomach, remembering how our parents had always emphasized family loyalty above all else. Family sticks together, they'd say, through thick and thin. My children, bless their innocent hearts, adored their Aunt Clara despite everything. They saw only the glamorous woman who bestowed expensive gifts, who lived in a sprawling mansion that seemed to have sprung from the pages of a fairy tale. Ethan had been buzzing about Aunt Clara's Christmas party for weeks, especially thrilled about seeing the 12-foot tree with its color-coordinated ornaments and the chocolate fountain Clara had mentioned during her last fleeting visit. Lily, with a child's earnest pride, had meticulously crafted a special ornament for her aunt's towering tree in art class. It was a clay star, painstakingly painted gold with vibrant red glitter meticulously sprinkled around the edges. She'd wrapped it carefully in tissue paper, asking me repeatedly, her small face serious, "Do you think Aunt Clara will like it? She likes fancy things," she'd said, adding another delicate layer of tissue for extra protection, as if to protect her vulnerable hope. The invitation had arrived in late November, thick cream cardstock, embossed with elegant gold lettering, announcing their annual holiday soiree. I'd marked the date on our kitchen calendar with a bright red star, and we'd immediately begun our preparations, saving a little each week for appropriate gifts and outfits. We chose simple, thoughtful gifts: a handcrafted scarf for Clara, a fishing book for David, knowing his interest in the hobby. Then came the phone call that changed everything. When I hung up the phone after Clara's shocking, audacious request, my hands were shaking so badly I had to sink onto the nearest chair. Her words, laced with cold disdain, echoed in my mind, reverberating like a broken record, low class, not on my level. I thought about all those countless nights I'd eaten instant ramen just so I could send her money for whatever crisis she was fabricating that week. The family vacation to the Grand Canyon we'd had to cancel because Clara desperately needed help with her property taxes. The second job I'd reluctantly taken, cleaning medical offices on weekends, when David's company supposedly had a temporary downturn. My first raw instinct was to call her back, to tell her exactly where she could shove her Christmas invitation, to unleash 15 years of suppressed frustration. Instead, I texted my best friend Rachel, who came over with a bottle of a surprisingly good, albeit cheap, Pinot Grigio after her shift at the very same hospital where we both worked. "What?" Rachel exclaimed, practically spitting out her wine, her eyes wide with disbelief as she poured us each a generous, much-needed glass. "After everything you've done for her? Allison, you need to cut her off. Completely, permanently." "It's not that simple," I sighed, glancing toward the kids' bedrooms where they were, thankfully, engrossed in their homework. "They love their aunt. And despite everything, she's still my sister." Rachel just shook her head, a knowing, exasperated look on her face. "Your sister is taking advantage of you, Sarah. She has been for years. You're working 60-hour weeks, practically living at the hospital while she's posting idyllic Instagram photos from luxury resorts in Bali. You see it, don't you?" "I know," I admitted, the words barely a whisper. "But family is family. Mom and Dad always taught us to stick together." "Your parents," Rachel countered, her voice firm but kind, "also taught you about dignity, about self-respect. Would they want you to be treated this way? To be walked all over like a doormat?" That question, it stayed with me. It gnawed at me long after Rachel left, her words echoing in the quiet of my small home. The next morning, I found Lily looking at the kitchen calendar, her small finger tracing the red star we'd marked for Clara's Christmas party. "How many more days until Aunt Clara's party?" she asked, her voice brimming with innocent excitement. "I want to see if her pool is frozen like last year. And can we play hide-and-seek in the ballroom?" Ethan joined us, clutching his meticulously wrapped ornament, a precious cargo. "Do you think Uncle David will do the scavenger hunt again? I almost found the golden candy cane last time." Their innocent excitement, their pure, unadulterated joy, made my decision even harder. How could I possibly tell them we weren't welcome? How could I explain that their beloved aunt, the woman they idolized, thought we weren't good enough? That the thoughtful presents they'd painstakingly selected, the handcrafted scarf for Clara, the fishing book for David, weren't sophisticated enough for my sister's exorbitant standards. The words felt like lead in my throat. That evening, a wave of profound nostalgia washed over me. I pulled out the old memory box, a dusty cardboard container filled with faded photographs of Clara and me growing up. There we were, building sandcastles on the shores of Lake Erie, our faces smeared with sunscreen and joy. There we were, riding bikes with streamers fluttering from the handlebars, our laughter echoing down the street. And there we were, opening Christmas presents in matching, slightly too big pajamas, our eyes wide with wonder. When, I wondered, had money and status become more important to her than these shared memories, these cherished moments, these unbreakable bonds of sisterhood? I remembered our father's words, the quiet wisdom he imparted, when Clara, beaming, had announced she was marrying David. "Just remember who you are, sweetheart. Remember where you come from. Money changes circumstances, yes, but it doesn't change character." Dad had been gone 5 years now, Mom, 3. What, I wondered, would they advise me to do in this seemingly impossible situation? And then the answer came, clearly, unequivocally. It resonated deep within my soul. They would tell me to stand up for myself, to stand up for my children, to reclaim my dignity, while still, crucially, leaving the door open for eventual reconciliation, for the possibility of healing. That night, my decision was made. Unshakable. We would attend the Christmas gathering, all 3 of us. If Clara wanted to make a scene, if she wanted to publicly humiliate her own family in front of her high society friends, then that would be her choice. But I would no longer enable her delusional sense of grandeur, her pathetic, fragile pretense, at the expense of my children's inherent dignity, or for that matter, my own hard-won self-respect. The next 2 weeks were a flurry of quiet, determined preparations. I used my modest Christmas bonus, every single penny, to buy Lily a beautiful emerald green dress. The fabric shimmered, and when she tried it on, her eyes, usually so serious, shone with a pure, unadulterated joy that pierced my heart. For Ethan, I found a handsome little suit at a consignment shop, a hidden gem that looked absolutely brand new, still with the tags on. I splurged, a rare treat, on having their outfits professionally pressed, the creases sharp and perfect, and I scheduled appointments at the salon where my friend Jessie worked, ensuring they both got proper, stylish haircuts. For myself, I chose a simple, classic black cocktail dress I'd worn to a hospital fundraiser years ago. Rachel, ever my fierce advocate, insisted on lending me a statement necklace. "If you're going into battle," she'd said, her eyes twinkling mischievously, "you need proper armor." She fastened the sparkling pendant around my neck, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the warrior she believed me to be. I also prepared the children carefully, gently, explaining that sometimes adults, even family, have disagreements. But that doesn't mean they should worry, I emphasized. And Aunt Clara is very particular about her home, I explained during our family dinner, making sure to keep my tone light, almost casual. So we'll need to use our very best manners. And if she seems upset about something, know this, sweethearts. That's not about you, okay? That's grown-up stuff. It's about her, not you. "Is Aunt Clara mad at us?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowed with concern, his small voice barely a whisper. "No, sweetheart," I replied, my voice as steady as I could make it. "Aunt Clara just has a different way of doing things. But we're family, and family shows up for each other, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable." Lily, perceptive beyond her years, studied my face, her bright eyes searching for answers. "Are you and Aunt Clara fighting?" I chose my words with exquisite care. "We have different ideas about some things, honey, but that's okay. People can disagree, deeply, and still love each other. We're going there to celebrate Christmas, as a family. That's the most important thing." As Christmas approached, my anxiety, a relentless knot in my stomach, grew steadily. I rehearsed potential scenarios in my mind, preparing witty, composed responses to whatever Clara might say or do. I reminded myself of all the times I'd dealt with difficult, demanding families as a nurse, maintaining a cool, professional demeanor, even when emotions ran sky high. I could do this. I could do this for my children. I could do this for myself. And yes, even for Clara, who somewhere, deep beneath her layers of designer clothes and her suffocating status anxiety, was still my little sister. The little girl who loved macaroni and cheese and believed in Santa Claus. The night before the party, I checked our gifts one last time. The handmade scarf for Clara was nestled in silver paper with a luxurious blue velvet bow, a touch of elegance. David's fishing book was accompanied by a meticulously selected array of hand-tied flies I'd found at a specialty shop. He'd mentioned, almost offhandedly, wanting to learn fly fishing during last year's gathering. For their home, a hostess gift. I'd chosen a hand-blown glass ornament from a local artist. Not expensive, no, but thoughtful and unique. A piece of genuine artistry. That night, sleep was a fleeting, elusive stranger. I barely slept, my mind racing, running through every conceivable outcome of our uninvited, almost defiant appearance at Clara's soiree. By morning, a strange calm had settled over me. I had finally made peace with whatever might happen. We were going to show up, with our heads held high, our dignity intact. Ready to celebrate Christmas as a family, whether Clara approved or not. On Christmas Eve, the air crisp and cold, we drove through the imposing iron gates of Clara and David's sprawling estate. Fresh snow had fallen silently the night before, transforming the 5-acre property into something plucked directly from a high-end holiday card. Pristine white blanketed the gently rolling lawns and the towering evergreen trees that dotted the meticulously landscaped grounds, each perfectly wrapped in thousands of tiny twinkling white lights. A team of workers, bundled against the cold, was meticulously clearing the circular driveway as we approached the grand, 3-story Georgian mansion. "Wow," breathed Lily, pressing her small face against the car window, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like a castle." Ethan, clutching his wrapped ornament tighter, his knuckles white, asked in a soft, reverent whisper, "Do real princesses live in houses like this, Mom?" "Just your Aunt Clara," I replied, trying desperately to keep my tone light, almost casual, as I parked behind a line of impossibly expensive luxury vehicles. A gleaming Mercedes, a sleek BMW, and a Bentley I recognized as belonging to David's father. The facade of the house itself was decorated with a precision that bordered on professional. Garlands, thick and verdant, framed every single window. Life-sized nutcrackers, their painted faces stern, flanked the massive front door. And a tasteful, almost artful arrangement of crimson poinsettias cascaded gracefully down the stone steps. I'd seen similar displays in architectural magazines. in the pages of glossy, unattainable dreams, but never, ever up close. Lily and Ethan clambered out of the car, their excitement palpable, a vibrant energy crackling in the cold air. They carefully navigated the cleared pathway in their freshly pressed dress shoes, their tiny footsteps crunching softly on the snow. I followed more slowly, balancing our gifts and the homemade cranberry bread I'd baked that morning, a cherished recipe from our mother that Clara had always loved as a child. Before we could even lift a hand to ring the bell, the massive front door swung open silently to reveal Clara. She was stunning, almost breathtaking, in a vibrant red designer dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my mortgage payments. Her perfect blonde hair was swept into an impossibly elegant updo, and diamonds, glittering with an almost blinding intensity, sparkled at her ears and throat. For a split second, a flicker of genuine shock registered on her perfectly composed face. Her eyes, wide with surprise, seemed to reflect my unexpected presence. Then, almost immediately, she composed herself, her features settling into a tight, almost artificial smile. "Allison," she said, her voice artificially bright, almost chirpy. "And everyone, what a surprise." Her eyes darted quickly behind us, toward the driveway, clearly checking if any other early guests had witnessed our unexpected, audacious arrival. Finding the coast clear, she stepped back reluctantly, grudgingly, to let us enter. "I thought we discussed this," she hissed quietly, her voice barely a whisper, as the children, oblivious, moved past her into the soaring entryway with its magnificent 20-foot Christmas tree, its lights twinkling like 1,000 distant stars. "We did," I replied, my voice calm, steady, unwavering. "And I decided my children deserved to spend Christmas with their family. All of their family." Before she could respond, David appeared behind her, his warm smile a stark contrast to his wife's frosty, almost glacial reception. "Sarah, kids, wonderful to see you." He embraced me genuinely, a comforting, firm hug, before kneeling to high-five Ethan and compliment Lily on her beautiful emerald dress. "The more the merrier, right, darling?" he added, glancing pointedly at Clara. "Of course," she replied, her words forced through clenched teeth, a thin veneer of politeness barely masking her simmering fury. "Let me show you where to put your things." She eyed our wrapped packages with barely disguised disdain, as if they were contaminated. As we followed her through the marble-floored foyer, I could see about 30 guests already mingling in the vast great room beyond. The air was filled with the soft, ethereal strains of classical Christmas music, emanating from hidden speakers. Uniformed servers circulated with trays of glistening champagne flutes and delicate hors d'oeuvres. "David's parents are here, along with the Andersons and the Taylors," Clara informed me, name-dropping local socialites with an almost practiced nonchalance. "Oh, and the Wilsons just flew in from Aspen this morning. Jack Wilson is considering David for their new development project." I recognized this for what it was, a subtle yet unmistakable reminder, a warning. Important people were present, and I, by implication, needed to behave accordingly. Translation: don't embarrass her, don't ruin her meticulously constructed evening. "The children can put their coats in the mudroom," she continued, pointing toward a side hallway, her voice clipped, dismissive. "There's a media room downstairs where they can watch movies. Brittany, our sitter, is down there with the Andersons' kids." "Actually," I interjected gently, stepping forward, "Ethan and Lily were really looking forward to the party. Tyler even made you a special ornament for your tree." On cue, Ethan, sensing his moment, proudly held up his tissue-wrapped creation, his eyes wide with anticipation. "I made it myself, Aunt Clara." A flicker of something, annoyance, panic, crossed Clara's perfect features before she took the small, carefully wrapped package with just her fingertips, as if accepting a questionable laboratory sample. "How thoughtful," she said, her voice devoid of genuine warmth. "I'll just put this somewhere safe for now. Our tree decorator used a very specific color scheme this year, you see." Ethan's face fell slightly, his shoulders slumping, but he nodded bravely, trying to hide his disappointment. Richard, observing this painfully awkward exchange, quickly intervened. "Hey, Ethan, why don't you show me this masterpiece? I bet it would look perfect on the family tree in the den. That's where we put all our special ornaments, the ones with heart." As David gently led Ethan away, his arm around his shoulders, I could have hugged him for his unexpected kindness. Clara, meanwhile, guided Lily and me toward the great room, her voice dropping to a whisper, filled with urgent instructions as we walked. "Try not to mention your job," she muttered, her eyes scanning the room. "The Wilsons are germaphobes, and hospital talk just makes them terribly uncomfortable. And if anyone asks where you live, just say north of the city, rather than naming your actual neighborhood. It's less complicated." Before I could respond to these unbelievably offensive suggestions, we entered the gathering, a sea of Clara's carefully curated, impeccably dressed guests. Conversations momentarily paused, like a sudden hush in a bustling forest, as curious eyes assessed the newcomers, the interlopers. I felt Lily press closer to my side, her small hand instinctively reaching for mine, suddenly shy, almost overwhelmed, amidst these unfamiliar, impeccably dressed adults. "Everyone, this is my sister Sarah and my niece Lily," Clara announced, her voice filled with a forced, almost brittle cheerfulness. "They decided to surprise us tonight." A murmur of polite greetings rippled through the room, though I caught a few exchanged glances, a subtle roll of the eyes, that suggested Clara had perhaps mentioned me before, and not favorably. Within minutes, Lily, with her sweet disposition, was drawn away by another young girl around her age, leaving me momentarily alone. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server, its bubbles tickling my nose, and took a small, fortifying sip, using the moment to observe the room. The decor was stunning, truly. Crystal, silver, and gleaming white, with strategic accents of deep burgundy, creating an atmosphere of understated opulence. Fresh flowers, impossibly vibrant, adorned every surface. A massive, roaring stone fireplace crackled with a perfectly arranged, almost artistic fire. I was admiring an intricate ice sculpture of a reindeer, its delicate antlers shimmering in the ambient light, when I overheard Clara speaking quietly to two women near the bar. "Yes, that's my sister," she was saying, her voice a low, confidential murmur. "Single mom, works at the hospital. I try to include her when I can, you know. Charity begins at home and all that." The women nodded sympathetically, one even patting Clara's arm in apparent admiration of her profound generosity. I felt my cheeks burn, a hot flush spreading across my face, but I maintained my composure. I remembered my purpose for being here. This wasn't about me. This wasn't about my ego or Clara's petty slights. It was about my children, about them experiencing a family Christmas, about them understanding, deep in their hearts, that they were worthy of respect, worthy of love, regardless of their zip code or the cost of their clothes. After about 30 minutes of small talk with various guests, most of whom seemed genuinely surprised, almost disbelieving, to learn that Clara, the socialite, had a sister, I excused myself to check on the children. I found Lily, her natural nurturing abilities shining through, helping younger kids with a craft project, her patient instructions clear and gentle. Ethan was proudly showing David's father his ornament, now hanging prominently on a smaller, more intimate tree in the wood-paneled den. A beacon of simple beauty amidst the grandeur. As I watched them, a warmth spreading through me, Clara appeared silently at my side. "We need to talk," she said, her voice terse, filled with barely suppressed fury, as she guided me abruptly into a nearby powder room and closed the heavy door with a decisive thud. "What were you thinking?" she demanded, her arms crossed tightly over her designer dress, her eyes narrowed to slits. "Showing up after what I told you? After I specifically requested you didn't?" "I was thinking," I replied evenly, my voice calm but firm, "that family doesn't exclude family from Christmas, and that my children deserve better than to be deemed low class by their own aunt, by you." "You know what I meant," she huffed, rolling her eyes in exasperation. "This is an important night for David's business connections. I need everything to be perfect, and we're imperfect." "How exactly?" I asked, challenging her directly. "Because we don't wear designer labels. Because Ethan's ornament doesn't match your arbitrary color scheme." "Don't be dramatic, Sarah," she rolled her eyes again, a familiar gesture of dismissal. "You know how these things work. Appearances matter. Everything matters." "To whom, Clara?" I pressed, stepping closer. "To these people you're trying so hard to impress? Do they know that half your appearances are funded by your nurse sister's salary? Do they know that your designer lifestyle is subsidized by my overtime? Her eyes widened in genuine alarm. Keep your voice down, and that's not fair. I've had some temporary cash flow issues, that's all. 15 years of temporary issues, I pointed out, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. But we're not discussing that now. We're here as family. The children are behaving beautifully, perfectly, and they will continue to do so. I suggest you do the same. Without waiting for her response, I opened the door with a decisive click and returned to the party, my heart pounding a furious rhythm against my ribs, but my resolve, like steel, stronger than ever. Whatever manipulative game Clara was playing, I was no longer a willing participant. At precisely 7, a server, elegant and unobtrusive, gently struck a crystal chime, its melodious ring signaling that dinner was ready. Guests, a well-behaved flock, began migrating toward the formal dining room, where a table that could comfortably seat 30 was arranged with a precision that would impress a military general. Fine china, gleaming sterling silver, and sparkling crystal glassware gleamed under the soft, ethereal light of an antique chandelier. Each place setting, a testament to meticulous planning, included 3 wine glasses, multiple forks, and a hand-calligraphed name card. I noticed, with a sharp pang of disappointment, that there were no place cards for Ethan, Lily, or me. Clara approached, feigning dismay at the oversight. "Oh dear, it seems our calligrapher didn't prepare cards for you, since you weren't on the original guest list," she said, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to clearly hear. A subtle jab, a thinly veiled insult. "Let me just rearrange things." David intervened smoothly, effortlessly. "No problem at all. Kids, would you like to sit by me? And Sarah, there's plenty of room between Mrs. Wilson and my mother." As we settled into our assigned seats, mine between 2 older women who regarded me with polite, yet undeniable curiosity, I noticed Clara whispering animatedly to a server. The server nodded, disappeared briefly, and returned with 3 place settings that clearly, blatantly, did not match the rest of the table. The message wasn't subtle. We were afterthoughts. Accommodated, yes, but not truly, genuinely welcome. The first course arrived, a delicate butternut squash soup, garnished with fragrant truffle oil and tiny microgreens, a culinary masterpiece. Ethan eyed it suspiciously, his nose wrinkling slightly, before taking a tentative tiny spoonful. Lily, always more adventurous with food, dug in with unbridled enthusiasm. "So Sarah," began Mrs. Wilson, David's potential business partner's wife, her voice kind, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Clara tells us you work at a hospital." "Yes," I replied, my voice clear and steady. "I'm a pediatric nurse at City General." "How noble," she said, with what seemed like genuine admiration, a spark of genuine interest in her eyes. "My sister volunteered at a children's hospital last year. She found it quite intense." "It can be challenging," I agreed, a small smile playing on my lips, "but also incredibly rewarding. There's nothing quite like helping a child through illness and seeing them recover, seeing them laugh again." "And you're raising 2 children on your own?" asked David's mother from my other side, her tone gentle, almost tender, rather than judgmental. "Yes, Ethan and Lily," I confirmed, my heart swelling with pride. "They're wonderful kids." "They certainly seem to be," she nodded approvingly, her gaze softening as she glanced toward where they sat with David. "Well-mannered and bright, you should be very proud." This simple, heartfelt acknowledgement nearly brought tears to my eyes, a stark contrast to Clara's dismissive attitude. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I am." Across the table, Clara was holding court, describing their recent weekend at a luxurious ski resort in Vail, her voice animated, her gestures sweeping. "The private lessons were worth every penny," she declared, her eyes sparkling. "The instructor used to train Olympic athletes, you know." "Speaking of expense," interjected a man I recognized as David's college friend, a jovial fellow named Tom. "How's that investment opportunity David mentioned last month? Did you decide to buy in?" David looked momentarily uncomfortable, a fleeting shadow crossing his face. "We're still considering our options," he said, clearing his throat. "The timing might not be right, you know, with the new pool house renovations." "Oh, we're definitely moving forward with the pool house," Clara corrected him, her voice ringing with finality, her eyes flashing. I've already approved the final designs, imported marble, smart home integration throughout. It's going to be featured in Modern Luxury magazine. David's surprise was evident, a momentary widening of his eyes, but it was quickly, expertly masked. I wondered, with a sinking feeling, how many of Clara's unilateral, extravagant decisions were being funded by my so-called loans. The second course arrived, a crisp frisee salad with perfectly poached pears and candied walnuts. Ethan frowned at the unfamiliar greens, but catching my encouraging nod, bravely took a bite. "And what neighborhood do you live in, Sarah?" asked a woman further down the table. Her diamond earrings catching the light, she tilted her head, her curiosity genuine. Before I could answer, Clara interjected, her voice smooth, almost too smooth. "Sarah lives in a charming area north of the city, very up-and-coming." "Elmwood Park," I stated clearly, firmly, reclaiming my narrative. "It's a wonderful community, actually, with excellent schools and parks. We love it there." The woman's expression revealed she wasn't familiar with the middle-class suburb, but she nodded politely, perhaps sensing my conviction. "And what school do your children attend?" she continued, her focus undeterred. "My grandson just started at Lakeside Academy again this year." Clara attempted to intercept again, a subtle cough, a nervous fidget. "They're in the public school system. Sarah is very involved in their education, you see." "Ethan and Lily attend Elmwood Elementary," I said directly, meeting the woman's gaze. "Lily's in the gifted program for mathematics, and Ethan is thriving in their arts curriculum. His drawing really is quite advanced." As I spoke, in a flash of childish clumsiness, Ethan accidentally knocked over his water glass. The crystal tumbled, clattering against the plate, splashing water across the pristine white tablecloth. His face crumpled in mortification, his eyes wide with horror. "I'm sorry," he gasped, frantically trying to mop up the spill with his small napkin, tears welling in his eyes. Before I could reassure him, before I could whisper a calming word, Clara's voice, sharp and cruel, cut through the momentary hush. "This is exactly why children should eat separately until they're properly trained for formal dining." The cruel, dismissive comment hung in the air, a poisoned dart. Ethan's lower lip trembled, and I saw Lily's small shoulders stiffen in fierce defense of her brother. David, bless his heart, quickly handed Ethan his own napkin, a large, comforting piece of linen. "No harm done, buddy," he said kindly, his voice warm and reassuring. "I did much worse at my parents' dinner party when I was your age. Knocked over an entire gravy boat onto my father's boss's lap." His father chuckled in confirmation, a hearty, booming laugh. "Ruined a perfectly good suit, that one did. But suits can be replaced. Good company can't." The warm, genuine response from David and his father seemed to further irritate Clara, whose fixed smile had grown increasingly rigid, almost brittle, as the evening progressed. As servers silently cleared the salad plates, Clara, desperate to regain control of the narrative, directed the conversation toward her recent charity work, meticulously organizing a high-profile fundraiser for the Art Museum's new wing. "We raised over $300,000, she boasted, puffing out her chest, her eyes scanning the table for validation. "The chairwoman said it was the most successful event in their history." "That's wonderful," commented David's mother, genuinely impressed. "Which programs will benefit specifically, Clara?" Clara hesitated. A brief, almost imperceptible pause. She was clearly unfamiliar with the actual purpose of the fundraiser beyond its glittering social prestige. "Oh, various educational initiatives, of course," she sputtered, her eyes darting nervously. "Actually," offered another guest, a distinguished woman who looked to be in her 60s, her voice calm and knowing. "I believe it's primarily funding the new contemporary exhibition space. My wife is on the museum board, you see." Clara's smile tightened further, almost imperceptibly. "Yes, exactly, that's what I meant. The main event, the main course arrived. Herb-crusted rack of lamb with creamy truffle mashed potatoes and delicate haricots verts. As the servers presented each plate with choreographed precision, I caught Lily staring at the bewildering array of utensils with uncertainty, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Start from the outside and work your way in," I whispered. Leaning in slightly, having meticulously researched formal dining etiquette before our arrival, preparing for exactly this moment. Clara, sharp-eyed, noticed this brief exchange and seized the opportunity, her voice dripping with mock helpfulness. Lily darling, that's your salad fork you're using. The dinner fork is the larger one, sweetie. Lily blushed, a deep crimson spreading across her cheeks, and quickly switched utensils, her small hands trembling slightly. It's hard to keep track when there are so many, isn't it? Clara continued, addressing the table at large, her voice carrying easily. Proper table manners are really something that should be taught from an early age, but I suppose in public schools, they have other priorities. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats at this transparent, ill-mannered dig. David's mother raised an elegant eyebrow, a silent rebuke, but remained silent. David himself was deeply engaged in conversation with Ethan about dinosaurs, deliberately ignoring his wife's caustic comment. Actually, I responded evenly, looking directly at Clara, my voice unwavering. Ethan and Lily have lovely manners. They're just not accustomed to 8-piece place settings. But they're quick learners, aren't they? Of course they are, David's mother agreed, her voice warm, giving Lily an encouraging smile. And you're doing just fine, dear. I still mix up my forks sometimes, and I've been attending formal dinners for 40 years. Clara, thwarted in her latest attempt to embarrass my children, her face growing visibly more frustrated, turned her attention to the hostess gift I'd brought. The hand-blown glass ornament, now displayed prominently on a side table with other hostess gifts, seemed to mock her. Sarah brought the most interesting ornament, she announced to the room, her voice dripping with feigned delight. It's quite folksy, isn't it? Handmade by a local artist, she said, making handmade sound like a dirty word. May I see it? Asked David's mother, who genuinely seemed interested, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. The ornament was passed to her, and she examined it with appreciation, turning it gently in her hand, admiring its unique artistry. This is beautiful workmanship. Is this from that new glass studio downtown? I've been meaning to visit. Yes, Firelight Studios, I confirmed, proud of my thoughtful choice. The artist trained in Venice before opening his shop here. I must get his information before I leave, she said, her voice warm, handing the ornament back with care. This would make a lovely gift for my sister. Clara's attempt to diminish my gift had completely backfired, adding visibly to her growing frustration, her perfect composure beginning to crack around the edges. As the dinner progressed through its final courses, a meticulously arranged cheese selection, then a delicate chocolate mousse, Clara's comments became increasingly pointed, more overtly designed to wound. When Ethan shyly mentioned his school's upcoming science fair, she remarked pointedly how fortunate the private school children were to have actual laboratories with proper equipment. When Lily, her face flushed with pride, shared that she'd made the honor roll, Clara noted, with a saccharine smile, that the standards must be different in public education, since every child at Lakeside Academy is required to maintain at least a 3.8 GPA. Each comment was delivered with a sweet, innocent smile that never, ever reached her eyes, each one meticulously designed to establish the undeniable superiority of her glittering world over our humble one. I maintained my composure, an inner calm, reminding myself that my children were watching. They were learning, not just from what I said, but from how I handled this relentless, passive-aggressive assault. But as I observed Lily's gradually wilting posture, her small shoulders slumping, and Ethan's increasingly forced, almost painful smile, something inside me, a deep primal resolve, shifted. The years of accepting Clara's condescension, of financing her ridiculous illusions, of prioritizing family peace over my own dignity, over my children's emotional well-being, it all crystallized into a sudden, blindingly clear resolve. When Clara mockingly praised Ethan's department store suit as adorable and suggested with a patronizing tone that I consider the children's consignment shop, where struggling families find nice second-hand clothes, I saw tears, hot and unshed, form in my son's eyes. And in that very moment, I knew. The time for polite tolerance had ended. After dinner, guests, well-fed and slightly tipsy, migrated to the great room for coffee, an array of lavish desserts, and what Clara announced would be a traditional gift exchange among intimate friends. This apparently did not include us, as no one had informed me of this tradition, leaving me conveniently without appropriate gifts for the assembled company. Clara made sure everyone was acutely aware of this oversight. "Don't worry about not bringing anything for the exchange, Sarah," she said loudly, her voice carrying across the room as servers distributed small, elegantly wrapped packages to each guest. You couldn't have known since you weren't originally, well, you know. Several guests looked distinctly uncomfortable at this pointed public exclusion. David, ever the diplomat, quickly intervened. Actually, he said, his voice warm, let's consider Sarah and the kids' presents our special gift this year. Family is what Christmas is all about, isn't it? His genuine warmth only highlighted Clara's coldness by stark contrast as guests began opening their presents, each one revealing expensive items like cashmere scarves, artisanal spirits, and luxury candles. Clara approached with our gift, the handmade scarf still in its silver wrapping. Let me open this now, she announced to the room, drawing attention to herself. My sister brought something, homemade, I believe. The way she emphasized homemade made it sound like I'd wrapped up a macaroni necklace. I watched, my heart pounding, as she deliberately, almost violently, tore the paper carelessly, revealing the handcrafted scarf I'd selected from a local artisan shop. A stunning creation of hand-dyed silk in subtle jewel tones. Oh, she said, with exaggerated surprise, her voice dripping with condescension. It's colorful. Thank you, Sarah. I'm sure it will be perfect for gardening or something. The scarf clearly was not gardening attire. Several women nearby actually murmured appreciatively at the piece, one even leaning forward, asking where it was from. Some little shop in Sarah's neighborhood, I imagine, Clara answered, before I could speak, cutting me off. They have the most quaint little businesses there, so budget-friendly. She set the scarf aside without further acknowledgement, without another glance, and moved on to opening gifts from other guests, exclaiming with theatrical delight over each one, regardless of its actual appeal. Ethan, who had been watching quietly from beside me, tugged gently at my sleeve. Mom, he whispered, his small voice thick with confusion. Aunt Clara doesn't like our presents, does she? Some people have trouble appreciating thoughtful gifts, sweetheart, I replied quietly, bending down to meet his gaze. That's about them, not about the gift. It's their problem, not yours. Lily, overhearing this painful exchange, slipped her small hand into mine and squeezed it supportively, her loyalty fierce. My heart swelled with pride at my children's emotional intelligence, their resilience, in the face of such truly poor, truly cruel behavior. Clara, meanwhile, had moved on to telling stories, childhood anecdotes, specifically chosen, meticulously curated, to paint me in an unflattering, almost pathetic light. Did you know Sarah once showed up to my sweet 16 in a homemade dress, she told the gathered guests, laughing. A brittle, mirthless sound. Mom tried to teach her to sew, and Sarah insisted on making this horrific purple creation. The seams were coming apart by the end of the night. What she conveniently omitted, what she deliberately erased from the narrative, was that our family couldn't afford to buy me a new dress that month, because Dad's medical bills from his back surgery had strained our already tight budget to the breaking point. I'd stayed up 3 nights in a row, hunched over that sewing machine, meticulously working on that dress, determined not to ask for money we simply didn't have. And in college, she continued, her voice rising in amusement, she dated this absolutely hopeless boy who worked at the campus bookstore. He would pick her up on a bicycle, with a milk crate attached to the back as a passenger seat. Can you imagine that? That hopeless boy had been working his way through college, saving every spare dollar for medical school. The bicycle was his only transportation, and he'd added the crate specifically, so he could take me on dates, so we could explore the town, despite not owning a car. With each story, each carefully crafted anecdote, Clara systematically undermined my dignity, my intelligence, my choices, in front of her glittering social circle, all while maintaining the veneer of sisterly teasing. I saw David becoming increasingly uncomfortable, occasionally trying to change the subject, his face a mask of polite distress. But Clara was determined. She was determined to continue her performance, to chip away at my reputation until I was nothing but a shadow. The final straw came when she began criticizing my parenting directly. Her voice, sweet as poison, carried clearly across the room. It's really admirable how Sarah manages with the children, considering their circumstances, she said to the room at large, her eyes sweeping over the guests, daring them to disagree. Public school, no father figure, living in that neighborhood. It's not what I would choose, of course, But Sarah has always been content with less, haven't you, dear? Ethan and Lily were both within earshot. I saw their expressions fall, their young faces mirroring my own pain. Ethan's bottom lip quivered slightly, his eyes filling with unshed tears, while Lily's face flushed with a deep, humiliating crimson. In that moment, something inside me, something deep and fundamental, snapped. 15 years of supporting Clara's fragile facade. 15 years of enabling her absurd delusions of grandeur. 15 years of prioritizing her feelings, her manufactured reputation, over my own children's inherent well-being. It all crystallized into absolute, blinding clarity. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, smoothing my dress with a calm that felt utterly alien to me. The room, which had been buzzing with polite conversation, began to quiet. Sensing the shift in atmosphere, "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady, clear, resounding in the sudden silence. "I'd like to propose a toast." The room fell utterly silent. Guests turned toward me, some looking curious, others distinctly uncomfortable, a few with dawning horror in their eyes. Clara's face registered a flicker of alarm, a dawning realization that her performance might be taking an unexpected turn. A server, looking slightly bewildered, handed me a champagne flute. "First," I began, raising my glass, my voice carrying easily across the hushed room, "I want to thank Clara and David for including us in their beautiful Christmas celebration. Family gatherings are precious, especially during the holidays." Clara's expression relaxed slightly, a fleeting look of relief washing over her face, perhaps thinking I was going to smooth things over to offer a public apology for my very presence. "I'd like to toast to my sister," I continued, my gaze fixed firmly on Clara's face, her smile fixed and fragile. "To Clara, who has created this impressive life for herself, and has always had such discerning taste." Murmurs of agreement, polite and unsuspecting, rippled through the room. Clara smiled triumphantly, a fleeting, triumphant flash of satisfaction. "Such discerning taste, in fact," I continued, my voice unwavering, betraying no emotion, "that maintaining it has cost approximately $4,000 a month for the past 15 years. The room fell utterly, completely silent. The silence was deafening, suffocating. Clara's triumphant smile froze on her face, her eyes wide with dawning horror, like a deer caught in headlights. "You see," I explained, my voice conversational, almost academic, as if explaining a complex medical procedure. "While Clara has been sharing stories about my supposedly humble life, about my circumstances, she's neglected to mention that her designer wardrobe, her spa memberships, her luxury vacations, and frankly, many of the exquisite furnishings in this beautiful home have been subsidized by her low-class sister, the nurse, the one who apparently isn't quite good enough to attend her Christmas party." Gasps, uncomfortable shifting, a ripple of whispers like a wave through the room. David's face showed complete confusion, then dawning, horrified comprehension, his eyes fixed on his wife, then on me. His jaw slackened. "For those who are mathematically inclined," I continued calmly, raising my glass slightly, "that's approximately $720,000 over 15 years, money that could have gone toward my children's college funds, or perhaps purchasing a home in a neighborhood Clara might find more acceptable, or indeed a more appropriate vehicle than my quaint sedan." I reached for my phone, my movements precise, deliberate, and pulled up my banking app. I have records of every transfer, every bill paid, every credit card statement covered when Clara called in a panic because her card was declined at Neiman Marcus or the spa. Every single one. "Sarah, stop it," Clara hissed, her voice a low, strangled whisper, her face now drained of all color, as white as the snow outside. "You're embarrassing yourself." "No, Clara," I countered, my voice gaining strength, conviction, with every word. "For the first time in 15 years, I'm not embarrassing myself. I'm simply telling the truth, the unvarnished, inconvenient truth." I turned to address David directly, his eyes still wide with shock and betrayal. "I'm truly sorry you're finding this out this way, David. I genuinely believed Clara when she said you knew about our financial arrangement. I see now that wasn't true." David's expression was a chilling mixture of shock, confusion, and raw, searing betrayal as he stared, utterly stunned, at his wife. "Clara, what is she talking about?" Clara's composure, her meticulously constructed facade, finally, irrevocably cracked. Her voice was thin, desperate. She's exaggerating. It was just a few loans, when we were getting established. Nothing like what she's claiming. She's being dramatic. Let's see, I replied, scrolling deliberately through my phone, the screen a beacon of truth in the dimming room. Last month alone, $3,000 for the landscaping deposit, $800 for your spa weekend, $1,200 for the designer boots you couldn't live without. Should I continue? The silence in the room was deafening. Even the uniformed servers, usually invisible, had paused, frozen in place by the unfolding, horrifying drama. So I concluded, raising my glass, my voice firm and clear. I'd like to toast my kept sister, who thinks she's rich, and to announce that I'll be stopping payment on your luxuries, effective immediately. Merry Christmas, Clara. I took a slow, deliberate sip of champagne, the bubbles feeling like fire on my tongue, set down my glass with a soft clink, and turned to my children. Ethan, Lily, it's time for us to go. Please thank Uncle David for his hospitality. Ethan looked confused, his small face a question mark, but obediently thanked David, who seemed too stunned, too shell-shocked to respond. Lily, with a wisdom far beyond her years, simply nodded, her eyes wide, and quietly gathered her things, understanding intuitively that something significant, something truly monumental, had just happened. As we prepared to leave, walking through the silent, shocked room, past Clara's shell-shocked friends who averted their gazes, we retrieved our coats from the mudroom. As we stepped out into the crisp, cold December night, a profound sensation washed over me. I felt lighter than I had in years, as if an invisible, crushing burden, one I hadn't even realized the true weight of, had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The air was frigid, biting, but I felt strangely warm, an inner glow. We had barely reached our car when I heard hurried footsteps, crunching rapidly across the fresh snow behind us. Turning, I saw David approaching, his face a complex mixture of raw anger, profound confusion, and utter disbelief. "Sarah, wait," he called, his voice strained. "We need to talk about this." Behind him, Clara was hurrying down the mansion steps, her designer heels, ridiculously inappropriate for the snow, causing her to slip and stumble in her desperate pursuit. "Kids, get in the car, please," I said calmly, opening the back doors. "Turn on your tablets. I need a few minutes with your aunt and uncle." Ethan and Lily complied without argument, sensing the profound gravity of the situation, their young faces solemn. Once they were settled, their faces glowing faintly from the tablet screens, I turned to face my sister and brother-in-law. "How dare you?" Clara hissed, her voice low, venomous, trembling with barely contained fury. "You've humiliated me, in front of everyone who matters. You've ruined everything." "How dare I repeated, my voice rising slightly, incredulously. "You called my children low class. You mocked their clothes, their education, their home. You deliberately tried to make them feel inferior. And you're concerned about your humiliation? About your facade?" "You've been helping Clara financially," David interrupted, his question directed at me, but his eyes fixed, almost accusingly, on his wife. "For 15 years? Without my knowledge?" "Yes," I confirmed simply, meeting his gaze directly. "Since shortly after your wedding. It started with small amounts. A credit card bill here, a shopping splurge there. Clara always said it was temporary, that you were building your business and couldn't access family funds yet. Over time, the amounts increased, and the temporary situation became permanent." David ran a hand through his hair, visibly processing this staggering, devastating revelation. "The spa memberships, the designer wardrobes, the first-class upgrades whenever we travel. Most of it?" "Most of it," I nodded, my voice quiet. "Not everything, of course, but a significant portion. Enough to impact my own family's security." "She's exaggerating," Clara interjected desperately, her voice cracking, her eyes pleading with David. "It was just occasional help, when things were tight, sisterly support. She's making it sound like charity." "Let me see your phone," David said suddenly, his hand outstretched toward me, his voice sharp, decisive. I hesitated briefly, then unlocked my banking app and handed it to him. He scrolled in silence for several moments, his expression growing darker, more grim, with each swipe. Monthly transfers of $3,000 to $5,000, he read aloud, his voice flat, emotionless. For years. Direct payments to Nordstrom, Saks, the country club. Clara, what the hell is this? David, please. Clara's voice took on a pleading quality I'd rarely, if ever, heard before. It's not what it looks like. Allison offered to help, she cried, turning to me, desperate. She wanted to contribute. Contribute? I echoed, a bitter, disbelieving laugh escaping my lips. Clara, I've been working 60-hour weeks, eating ramen for dinner, putting off essential home repairs to fund your lifestyle. I've delayed saving for my children's education to pay for your spa days, your designer bags, your fake life. You never said no, she countered, her voice rising in desperation. I asked, and you always said yes. That was your choice. Because you're my sister, I replied, my voice finally irrevocably breaking, tears welling in my eyes. Because every time you made it sound like an emergency. Because you promised it was the last time. Because I believed you when you said you'd pay it back someday. Because I loved you. David handed my phone back, his expression unreadable, a stony mask. The landscaping for the pool house, he said quietly, his voice dangerously calm. You told me your parents had left you a special investment account that had just matured. Clara faltered, her shoulders slumping. I needed to tell you something. You wouldn't have approved the renovation otherwise. And the trip to Bali last year, David continued, his voice relentless. You said that was a bonus from your interior design client. David, please, Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. Not out here, not now. No, he replied, his voice hardening, each word a hammer blow. I think out here is exactly where this conversation belongs. We've apparently been living a lie inside those walls for years. As they faced off, a chasm opening between them, I became acutely aware of my children waiting patiently in the car, of the cold seeping through my dress coat, of the curious, perhaps triumphant faces watching from the windows of the mansion. This confrontation, I said firmly, my voice gaining strength, needed to happen, but not like this. This is between you two now. My part in it is over. I won't be sending any more money, Clara. Not a dollar. You'll need to be honest with David about your finances, about your life, and make whatever adjustments are necessary. You need to grow up. You can't just cut me off, Clara protested, panic edging into her voice, rising in a shrill crescendo. What about the credit card bill due next week? The spa package I've already booked for New Year's? My reputation? The entitled desperation in her tone, the sheer audacity of her demands, confirmed, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that I was making the absolute right decision. Those are your problems now, Clara, I said, my voice quiet, firm, final. Not mine. I have my own family to take care of. My real family. We are your family, she insisted, her eyes wide, tears finally streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup. Yes, you are, I agreed, a sad truth in my voice. And family treats each other with respect, not contempt. When you're ready to have a relationship based on mutual respect, rather than financial dependence and deceit, I'll be here. Until then, I need to focus on Ethan and Lily. They deserve my full attention. David, who had been silent for several moments, watching Clara's complete breakdown, suddenly spoke, his voice filled with a quiet gravity. Sarah, I want you to know, I had no idea about any of this. I would never have allowed it if I'd known. I believe you, I said simply, meeting his eyes, seeing the genuine pain there. And I'm sorry you're finding out this way. He nodded, then turned to Clara, his expression stern. We need to go back inside. Your guests are waiting. But when they leave, you and I are going to have the most honest conversation of our marriage. It starts tonight. Clara's face crumpled completely, the carefully constructed facade, finally irrevocably collapsing. For a moment, a fleeting, heartbreaking moment, I glimpsed the vulnerable little sister I'd always tried to protect. The girl who'd been so insecure about our modest upbringing that she'd crafted an entirely different identity, a glittering, unattainable persona, to escape it. Part of me, the old Sarah, wanted to comfort her, to say everything would be okay, as I had countless times throughout our lives, patching up her messes, soothing her anxieties. But another part, the part that had finally found its voice tonight, knew this was a necessary reckoning, for both our sakes, for her growth, for my freedom. Goodbye, Clara, I said quietly, gently. Merry Christmas. As I turned to get into my car, I heard her call my name once more. When I looked back, she stood alone on the snowy driveway, her perfect makeup streaked with tears, looking smaller somehow, more fragile, without David beside her. What am I supposed to do now? She asked, her voice broken, desperate. And for the very first time in years, there was no manipulation in her question. Just raw, unadulterated fear. You figure it out, I answered honestly, the words coming easily, firmly, like the rest of us do, one day at a time. With that, I got into my car and drove away from the mansion, with its twinkling lights and its watching eyes, heading back toward our modest home, our home, where the Christmas tree might be smaller, less perfect, but where the laughter was real and the love was tangible. In the rearview mirror, I could see my children's reflections, their expressions solemn as they processed what they'd witnessed, their small faces a mirror of the evening's wait. Tomorrow we would talk about it properly. I would explain that sometimes loving someone means setting boundaries, that worth isn't measured by possessions, by designer labels, but by character, that the truth, however difficult, however painful, is always, always better than a beautiful lie. But for tonight, as we drove through the quiet, snow-covered streets, the snowflakes drifting lazily through our headlight beams, I simply reached back and squeezed their small hands, grateful for the authentic life we shared. Free at last from the suffocating burden of maintaining someone else's illusion. The drive home from Clara's mansion felt surreal, as if we were traveling between different worlds, rather than just different neighborhoods. Christmas lights twinkled along the route, defiant beacons in the cold night. In the back seat, Ethan and Lily had fallen silent, processing the evening's dramatic events in their own innocent ways. "Are you mad at Aunt Clara?" Ethan finally asked in a small voice, his voice barely a whisper. I considered my answer carefully. Not mad exactly, disappointed. Sometimes people we love make choices that hurt us, and it's okay to feel sad about that. It's okay to feel angry, but it's also okay to protect yourself. Is she still an aunt? Lily's practical question cut directly to the heart of what both children were likely wondering. Of course she is, I assured them, my voice soft. Family is forever, even when relationships get complicated. But sometimes, family members need time apart to figure things out, to heal, to grow. When we arrived home, our modest Christmas tree greeted us through the front window. Its multicolored lights, haphazardly strung by small, eager hands, were a stark, joyful contrast to Clara's professionally decorated, monochrome display. Inside, I kicked off my heels with relief and suggested an impromptu Christmas Eve celebration of our own. "Let's make hot chocolate and watch a holiday movie," I proposed, my voice light. The fancy party wasn't much fun anyway, was it? "Can we open one present tonight?" Ethan asked hopefully, his resilience already reasserting itself. "I think that's a perfect idea," I agreed, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Within 30 minutes, we had transformed our evening. Still wearing our party clothes, but now wrapped in cozy blankets, we sipped homemade hot chocolate topped with mini marshmallows, while How the Grinch Stole Christmas played on our television. The children each opened one carefully selected gift, new pajamas that they immediately changed into. And slowly, wonderfully, the tension from Clara's mansion gradually melted away in the warmth of our small living room, replaced by the simple, profound joy of being together. After the children went to bed, their little bodies finally still, I sat alone by the Christmas tree, the colorful lights casting dancing shadows on the walls. I finally allowed myself to process the enormity of what had happened. For 15 years, I had enabled Clara's fantasy life, at the expense of my own family's security, my own peace of mind. Tonight, I had finally broken that cycle. The relief was palpable, a physical sensation, but so was the grief for the relationship I had hoped to have with my sister, for the sister I'd lost, and the sister I might never truly get back. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. How did it go? I typed out a brief summary, my fingers flying across the screen, ending with, "I'll call you tomorrow with details. Kids are asleep. I'm okay, really," she responded immediately. "Proud of you. Merry Christmas to you. No more subsidizing ungrateful siblings." Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and excited children who, blessedly, temporarily forgot the previous night's drama in the pure, unadulterated joy of opening presents. We video called Michael, their father, who wished them Merry Christmas from his new home in California. Though our relationship had ended years ago, we maintained a cordial connection for the children's sake, a respectful truce. Around noon, my phone rang with an unknown number. It was David. "Sarah, I hope I'm not interrupting your Christmas," he began, his voice sounding tired, etched with exhaustion. "I wanted to check that you and the kids got home safely last night." "We did, thank you," I replied, stepping into the kitchen for privacy, my heart thumping a little faster. "How are things there?" He sighed heavily. "Difficult. Very difficult." After the guests left, Clara and I talked. Really talked. For the first time in years. I had no idea about the financial arrangement between you two. I'm still processing it all. The extent of the deception. "I understand," I said softly. "It's a lot to take in." "I want you to know," he continued, his voice firm. "I've frozen the credit cards and asked for a complete audit of our finances. The extent of the deception, it's larger than even you knew. There are loans in my name I never authorized. Accounts I didn't know existed. My stomach tightened with dread, a fresh wave of nausea. "David, I'm so sorry," I whispered. "Don't apologize, Sarah," he said, his voice softening. "You're not responsible for Clara's choices. But I am sorry for how she treated you and the children. It was inexcusable, unforgivable." "Thank you for saying that," I replied genuinely, truly touched by his acknowledgement, by his unexpected kindness. "I appreciate it." "We're getting help," he paused, a deep sigh. "Financial counseling, marriage counseling. It's going to be a long road. Clara's struggling. Behind all that arrogance, all that pretense, is someone who never felt good enough. It doesn't excuse her behavior, not by a long shot, but maybe it explains some of it." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table, turning his words over and over in my mind. Had I, somehow, contributed to Clara's insecurities by always being the responsible one, by bailing her out repeatedly instead of letting her face consequences? These were questions without easy answers, complex layers of a dysfunctional relationship. In the days that followed, I experienced a strange, almost dizzying mixture of emotions. Liberation, a soaring lightness, paired with moments of gnawing guilt. Relief, profound and cleansing, shadowed by a quiet sadness for the sisterhood I had lost. The practical reality of my decision, however, quickly became apparent. Without the crippling monthly drain of supporting Clara, my bank account slowly but surely began to recover. I started a proper college fund for the children, investing wisely, building for their future. And I finally scheduled long overdue repairs for our aging HVAC system, a small victory, but a significant one. I also began therapy, recognizing that untangling 15 years of financial codependence, of enabling, required professional guidance, a neutral third party to help me see clearly. My therapist, a kind and insightful woman, helped me understand the complex dynamics at play. How my deep desire to protect Clara, to keep her safe from perceived failures, had morphed insidiously into enabling. How my own self-worth, unconsciously, had become inextricably tied to being the reliable rescuer, the selfless giver. 2 weeks after Christmas, an envelope arrived from Clara's address. Inside was a check for $5,000. A pittance, yes, compared to the nearly $750,000 she'd received over the years, but significant nonetheless, and a brief, almost tentative note. "A start. I'm sorry. See." I deposited the check, a small gesture of faith, but didn't respond immediately. Actions, I knew, would speak louder than words, and one payment, one hesitant apology, didn't erase years of exploitation and disrespect. In late January, David called again, asking if I would meet with them both. "Clara's been doing work on herself," he said, his voice tinged with cautious hope. "She wants to apologize properly, but she understands if you're not ready." I agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our homes. When I arrived, Clara looked markedly different from the polished socialite who had hosted Christmas Eve. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simple jeans and a soft, unassuming sweater. Her elaborate hairstyle, once a perfect sculpted creation, was now a natural ponytail, more striking, more profound, was the absence of her usual arrogant confidence, replaced by a palpable nervousness, a fragility that was almost shocking. "Thank you for coming," she began awkwardly, after we ordered coffee. Her voice barely a whisper, her eyes fixed on her steaming mug. "I've been trying to figure out what to say, how to explain. But there's no explanation that makes what I did okay. None." "No, there isn't," I agreed, my voice calm, neither attacking nor rescuing her. "The financial stuff, taking your money all these years was wrong," she continued, her voice trembling. "But even worse was how I treated you. And the kids, looking down on you, acting superior. When all along, you were the one keeping me afloat, keeping my whole life from imploding." Her voice cracked, tears welling in her eyes. I was so ashamed of who I really was, of our modest upbringing, that I created this whole fake persona, and eventually I started believing it myself. I got lost in it. "Why?" I asked simply, the question hanging in the air. "We came from the same family, Clara. Mom and Dad gave us the same values, the same love. When did money and status become everything to you? When did you lose yourself?" She stared into her coffee, silent for a long moment, tears tracking paths down her cheeks. "I don't know exactly, maybe in middle school, when the popular girls made fun of my thrift store clothes. Or in high school, when I wasn't invited to parties at the lake house because I wasn't their kind. I decided I would become their kind, whatever it took, at any cost. For the first time, truly, I glimpsed how differently we had experienced our childhood. How moments I had brushed off as minor had cut deeply into Clara's fragile sense of self-worth. It was a revelation. "We're selling the mansion," David interjected, his voice firm, resolute, moving to something within our actual means, something we can truly afford. "Clara's looking for work too." "I'm starting at a design firm next month," she added, a faint blush on her cheeks. "Entry-level position, but it's something I actually know how to do, something real. And we're both in financial counseling, learning to live on a budget for the first time, learning how to be responsible." As our conversation continued, I maintained clear, firm boundaries while leaving space for potential reconciliation. This wasn't an instant fix, no. Trust, once shattered, takes time, years even, to rebuild. But it was a start, a genuine, vulnerable start. Over the following months, our relationship began a slow, hesitant transformation. Clara sent regular payments toward what she now openly acknowledged as a debt, not gifts. More importantly, she showed genuine interest in my life and the children's activities, attending Ethan's school play and Lily's math competition without a single disparaging comment about public education. She was present. She was trying. 6 months after the Christmas confrontation, we celebrated Lily's 11th birthday with a simple backyard barbecue at our home. Clara and David arrived with thoughtful, age-appropriate gifts, and notably without the designer labels and status symbols that had once so loudly defined their presence. When Lily eagerly showed Clara her science project, a working model of the solar system, my sister listened with authentic enthusiasm rather than her usual condescension. "You know," Rachel commented softly a few weeks later as we watched them interact at a local park, "I never thought I'd say this, but your sister actually seems like a real person now. Like she's finding herself." "She's trying," I acknowledged, a small smile on my face. "We all are." The most profound changes, however, weren't just in Clara. They were in myself and in my children. Without the suffocating financial burden of supporting my sister, I was finally able to reduce my overtime hours, spending more quality time with Ethan and Lily. We took our first real vacation that summer, a blissful week at a lakeside cabin where we swam, hiked, and reconnected, truly, deeply, without the constant, crushing pressure of financial stress. Ethan and Lily, having witnessed their mother finally stand up for herself and them, carried this invaluable lesson into their own lives. Lily became more assertive at school, confidently correcting a teacher who tried to take credit for her original research. Ethan stood up to a playground bully, not with aggression, but with a calm dignity that diffused the situation entirely. "You taught us it's okay to say no to people who don't treat you right, Mom," Lily told me one evening as I tucked her in, her eyes shining in the dim light. "Even if they're family, that's important, isn't it?" It's one of the most important lessons there is, sweetheart, I agreed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. It means setting boundaries. It means protecting your heart and your worth. A year after that fateful Christmas, we gathered again for the holidays. Not in a mansion with hired servers and social climbers, but in David and Clara's new, modest home. The decorations were simple, charming, heartfelt. The food was homemade, filled with warmth and comfort, and the atmosphere was genuinely, authentically warm, filled with laughter that was real, not forced. Clara, now working full-time and contributing equally to her household, had found an authentic confidence, a quiet strength, that her previous facade had only pitifully imitated. As we sat around their table, a simple, beautiful scene, I realized that the painful revelation at last year's Christmas party had ultimately been a gift. A profound, difficult, but ultimately liberating gift. It had freed me from the burden of enabling Clara, from the prison of pretense, from the constant anxiety, and it had freed my children from the subtle, insidious message that wealth or its absence determined their inherent worth. I'd like to propose a toast, David announced, raising his glass, a genuine smile on his face. To family, not perfect, no, but real, and to new beginnings. To new beginnings, we echoed, glasses clinking softly in the warm candlelight. That night, driving home with sleepy children nestled in the back seat, their soft breathing a comforting rhythm, I reflected on how dramatically our lives had changed in a single year. By standing up for myself and my children, by refusing to continue a destructive pattern, I had not only improved our financial situation, but had also modeled the self-respect, the courage, the authenticity I wanted my children to develop. True worth, I had learned, isn't measured in designer labels or social approval. It's found in authenticity, in healthy boundaries, in the courage to live according to your values, even when doing so disrupts comfortable, yet ultimately destructive, patterns. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for others is to stop enabling destructive behavior and insist on truth, however uncomfortable it might be. As we pulled into our driveway, the snow still shimmering under the streetlights, Lily stirred in the back seat, her voice soft with sleep. "Mom, are you glad about what happened last Christmas?" Even though it was hard, I considered her question carefully, a lump forming in my throat. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I am. Sometimes the hardest moments lead to the most important changes, to the greatest freedom." "I think Aunt Clara is happier now," Ethan observed sleepily from his car seat. "She laughs for real, not the fake laugh she used to do." Out of the mouths of babes, I thought, smiling, tears blurring my vision at their profound perceptiveness. "I think you're right, sweethearts. Sometimes people get lost trying to be something they're not, finding your way back to who you really are. That's the greatest gift of all. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who was taking advantage of you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, if it gave you a little bit of hope or courage, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's an act of self-respect that ultimately benefits everyone involved. Thank you for listening, and may your own holidays be filled with authentic connections and genuine joy.